So maybe I'll just kick off the session with some perspectives, and then the way we could do is that we'll then structure this into about three broad points of discussion. So Pushkar, if you could just put up the slide, I'll just set a little context on with some data that we see, and then we could pick it up from there. Just go to the next one. I think because this, I think given the audience, we are not talking about India, so I'll just have a fairly audience from our Asia Pac colleagues, and we'll just focus on more contextual parts versus the India part here. Right? So these were the three things that I thought we could spend our time on. The first is, as professors, as academicians, as administrators in education, how do you look at getting the job and skill insights, right? What is the demand that is coming in? How do you inculcate that courses back into the education community, and then how do you marry the two? So that's something that we are looking at, especially in many areas. We are starting to see a few trends. One is, of course, in engineering, newer technologies coming in, automation coming in, entry-level jobs going through. So that's creating one set of motion. Apart from that, there is also emergence of convergence in many fields, right? I think there was Professor Raja who spoke about the convergence of, let's say, biomedical sciences with technology and stuff like that, right? So we are starting to see convergence, which requires more multidisciplinary learning. So we'll talk through a little bit about that as to what we are seeing as insights, and I would want to hear from you, each one of you. What is it that you are seeing in your respective countries, in your markets, and amongst your students and learners? Right? The second one, I'm sure with the way the pandemic has been for across the world, and most of us had to adapt and teach online, right? And the way it happened was that we are probably from a point where we were in many cases on the lower side of the spectrum in terms of online tools being used for teaching. To the other side, we probably had to pivot into close to almost this becoming 100%, right? Almost 100% of teaching went online. But it also, while it gave us a view of what the opportunity was, it also, clearly outlined a lot of challenges that came out in terms of to make that learning effective. So I just wanted to spend some time discussing that. And the last one, of course, we'll build on the first two, is what are the approaches that we are seeing? We could share some perspective that we are seeing from in the context of the customers that we have worked with. But we'd love to hear from you as to what is it that how you would like to approach this context of blended learning. What is it that you have seen amongst your other peers, colleagues, and share your experiences. So these are the three broad areas that I would like to spend time on. Maybe just to kick off the first one, Pushkar, if you could just get to the first slide here. This is a double disruption that we faced last year. Number one, automation, which was already in the works over the last few years, especially the automation of entry-level jobs was something which started impacting college graduates, right? So the way the pyramid used to be, if the pyramid was an equilateral triangle, if I'm going to put it this way, the angle of the breadth of the base of the triangle is becoming smaller and smaller because of automation, and the higher level skills are being demanded by the industry, right? So the automation is actually shrinking that base, what used to be a big base for entry-level graduates. That apart, of course, COVID accelerated that automation because people wanted to get things done faster. Digital adoption, digital transformation picked up, as there's some people say, 10 times more pace than what it was earlier. So the combination of these two forces is creating a sense of displacement in jobs, especially entry-level jobs. The World Economic Forum talks about 85 million jobs being displaced by virtue of automation and COVID impact. The second part people talk about, especially that this has come from WEF again, is the core skills that we need for workers is also changing, right? So there is a context of what is the skills that is needed to get into workforce. And then there is also the context of lifelong learning, where workers need to constantly get into this habit of lifelong learners and then constantly emerge in newer areas of skills so that they are relevant in the context of the economic work life that they have, right? And the third one is, of course, the context of workforce being able to operate remotely. The last year and a half, we have seen 44% of the workforce is operating remotely. And the last one, of course, 85% of the employers are accelerating the digitization of work processes. So we are seeing this impact. This is something that, especially university administrators, fresh graduates, we are faced with this situation. So what could we do in that context of double disruption in the way we look at skills that need to be imparted on the learners and students, right? If you could get to the next slide, please, Pushkar. So that's one context I wanted to put through. So what I wanted to ask you all is that, how are you getting job skills and insights in your respective universities? If there is some perspective that you could talk about, and what are the skills that you are looking to build in your students? These are the two things. If there is some perspective that I could get from you, and then I will share a few data that we have seen from our side, right? Pushkar, if you could just take it off the screen and then get everybody back on screen. Maybe Professor Tilakratne, yeah, I'll go with you first. Let me hear you.
Sure. And of course, the first question now, of course, what are the placements or, employment opportunities available? Of course, my plan for the Open University of Sri Lanka, the first, of course, I did in the past for each degree program, of course, each department level and the faculty level for different programs, and formulating industry advisory committees. So where the industry advisory committees is that time respective to the discipline, and we welcome to the university and to be with the academics, and then discuss what their requirements are. So therefore, and this is the continuous dialogue. Right. And accordingly, the guideline, it is the main guideline is the curriculum. So the curriculum should be matched with those, that time in industry expectations. So that is where we could, make a sense to change our delivery, the change our, teaching and learning, and how to, that embed the technology for the, that whatever, that our courses that we are delivering. And right. Not only that, the second part of it is that embedding from the day one itself, what is called work-based training. Right. Work-based training, it means that, so like in Japan, where the Toyota company is going, when student is registered with the first year, fresher, of course, given chance to visit Toyota company to get the insight first. So therefore, thereafter, the Toyota company is, giving an internship throughout the 3 years or 4 years. So then they will really, in the university, they are completing courses. So then practically, they are, undergoing real, work-based training. So then at the end, of course, the same, places, the students will have an opportunity to will work in the future very well. Otherwise, what's happening in Sri Lanka, all 3 years or 4 years, that completes within the university, and there is no work-based training. So then when when the graduates are passing out, so they are not in the right employment, they are in the underemployment.
Correct. Yeah.
I think that I answered the first question.
Yes, I agree. So one of the things that you're saying in the context of industry, visibility of what skills you need to do is you're looking at a closer association with the industries. And you spoke about the Toyota model in Japan, which is giving better insights to the students, and then students come out more ready to be employed. So that's a great perspective from you, Professor Tilakratne. Thank you. Professor Lema, if I come to you, maybe it'll be wonderful to hear your perspective around what you're seeing in Philippines, and if there is any other additional data points that you could share in terms of where you are getting additional skills and insights for students, right?
Like that of our colleague from Sri Lanka, we also are more industry driven in our curriculum, specifically in our campus, where we are located in areas where there are economic zones.
Yeah.
So we are fortunately located in the south of Manila, where there's quite a number of economic zones, and that gives us access to industry practitioners. Hence,
Right.
in the development of our curriculum, in the development of our course content, we do have two levels of industry board of advisors.
Okay.
One is on the per college level, even to the point of program levels, where we do ask them to join us in half a day meeting so that we can get feedbacks from them as to, first off, how our graduates are faring, and second, any development in the industry side that may be inputted in what we're teaching inside the campus. And then we also have the institutional level, where we have CEOs of multinational companies who join us and give us insights on what are needed. Basically, what has been a resounding request and demand from industry is that of a better attitude of graduates. Aside, of course, from technology, aside,
Yeah.
of course, from uh, technological competency, is the attitude to collaborate, the willingness of our graduates to work hand in hand with different people and learning to adjust. Maybe it's not just learning how to adjust to fellow Filipinos, but working
Global
with
cultural.
yes, with the international community,
Right.
as technology has made everything accessible, and
Right.
that work can be shared anywhere except for time differences. So I think that essence of attitude, technical competency, and the availability to collaborate is something that we are learning from industry. That's been a constant demand for years already.
Sure.
But there's
So
also a rise in the demand of technical competency,
I agree.
such
Yeah.
that our students have to know how to use technology in collaborating. Likewise, the use of data analytics is also very much in demand, because it looks like with so much data, our students would need to know how to digest. Um, the the pandemic has affected the mindset of quite a number of students. I do not know with other countries here, but we feel like most of our students feel so privileged, and that they always have the grand excuse of mental health, so that when they feel that there's so much to do, they would go and demand for a break, and that they would be saying we've been loaded too much. So I think one skill that I personally think resilience is one skill that they should learn as they work from home, or begin to join a workplace that is not there, a
Yeah.
workplace that is actually home. That resilience in attitude, that they can work regardless of the hours, and that they can work alone at home and yet internationally collaborative,
Yeah.
is one skill that might be on demand in as far as how we should be preparing our graduates.
Sure, Professor Lemon.
I think that's where we are.
Sure. Thank you. I think great perspectives. I think in addition to industry perspective that Professor Tilakratne spoke about, I think it was wonderful to hear the soft skills aspect, which is another area that we are seeing. So maybe Pushkar, if you could just bring a couple of slides, I just wanted to share what we are seeing. If you can bring slide number 7, and then slide number 8, I could just take you through that. There's some data points that we have seen this, right? So on the left side, these are the top 5 skills that are in increasing demand. This is the data that we have got from the World Economic Forum, right? So as Professor Lemma, you spoke about the data aspects. So data analysts and scientists, AI/ML, they're linked skills, right? You can't have a great AI/ML learning specialist if you don't have strong data specialists. Without data, AI has no meaning. So fundamentally, you need, while great programmers in AI/ML, you need equally strong skills in data side, right? Be it in terms of analysts or be it in terms of big data specialists. Then the other part that what we are seeing is the context of using these two broad technological platforms like data and AI/ML in the context of leveraging it in a business environment. Typically, one of the easiest place and one of the first low-hanging fruit that we see where data and AI is used is around customer engagement, which is typically leveraging digital marketing and strategy specialists. And this has only emerged a lot more in the context of the pandemic, where companies have started to shift their spend into digital marketing side. So this is another area, right? The fifth one that we see is definitely around the process automation specialists. As we spoke about, companies are trying to take the lower end of the jobs and automate that and do it in a much faster way simpler jobs like data entry specialists, which used to exist in huge numbers, which is where people would get in and then program, learn the skills, and then move up the value chain. Those are getting completely automated. So the requirement is that when a person comes out of the college, he is not spending time basic skills which have got automated, but he should come one level higher with some ready skills that could then be utilized. So those are the 5 top trends that we saw from WEF. Similarly, there was a Microsoft study which spoke about 150 new jobs getting created by 2025. This was released sometime last year, and these were the 5 areas: privacy and trust, about 1 million jobs; cybersecurity, like with all digital skills, cybersecurity is a big area; data analysis, cloud and data roles. Cloud is what is enabling most of the technologies on the left side that I spoke about. And then, of course, software development, because software is getting embedded in almost every industry. So that's the big change that we're seeing. So you're starting to see where development skills has not just remained only in technology companies or technology-enabled businesses like a telecom or a banking, but it has started moving into traditional sectors like manufacturing and other areas as well. So I'll just one more perspective I would like to share here. This is what we see. This is our platform. When we see on Coursera, we see these are the top 5 skills that are trending globally, in computer science, neural networks, digital marketing, blockchain, Python, JavaScript. And on the right side, these are the 5 top courses that students are going after. And Professor Lemma, if you see the last one, is that aspect that you spoke about, where industry is demanding people to be more ready as they enter business, right? Something as simple as writing professional emails is something that they want people to be aware of and be ready with. So these are some insights. Maybe there's the Global Skills Index report. Next one, I think we can just come to that slide here. So we just published the Global Skills report. This is available to us. I'm sure Panisha will find a way to get this available to each one of you. So this has given a much broader perspective of what is it that we are seeing across the world in terms of skills. It has country level rankings. It has skills of the future. It also talks about resilient career pathways as to how, in the emerging areas where skills will constantly keep redeveloping, how do you build a career pathway, as a fresh person getting into employment, you build a career for the future, you work for 30, 35, 40 years. How do you build a career pathway that is resilient in the face of all the changes that are happening, right? And then, of course, the actionable approaches to support the workforce that aligns to the economic development programs of a country, right? Every country has their own high priority items, so there are some actionable approaches. So I would encourage each one of you to take a look at this. This has come from an insights that we have from about 85 million learners on our platform, about 6,000 odd companies that we work with, and about 200 odd universities that are engaged with us in building the content. So it's a combination of institutions, it's a combination of educators, and it's a combination of learners. So that insights is what comes in across out here, right? So maybe with this, I would move to the next second segment, which is, if I may ask, what were the core challenges that you faced when it came to teaching online? I don't know, Professor Engelbert, if you are available to speak. I know you mentioned that you are in a car, so if you are in a position to speak, we would love to hear you.
Hi, Professor. What's the question?
The question is, what are the challenges? Let's say in the last year, what are the challenges that you're facing when it comes to teaching online? What have you observed? What have been your experience?
No, the very first thing is actually the inevitable problem on internet connectivity. Like Philippines is one of the most expensive. It offers expensive internet connection, and also the bandwidth that is available in the Philippines is not similar to. It's not comparable to other countries, so we're suffering this kind of internet connectivity. But aside from that, some of the students don't have the gadgets, so most of them have the smartphones. So they're using, if there is a synchronous task or a meeting, a face-to-face online or a virtual meeting, the students cannot or can only use their cell phones. And those are the biggest challenges when it comes to the hardware side. But for the other thing is the participation. I think we've been struggling about how the students can participate in the discussions simply because they were not trained or they were not meant to really speak online and use the camera. But it does become interesting because more and more students are already have adjusted and they're already participating in the discussions. The other thing is, since the students are doing things or tasks on their own, deadlines are not met. So we have to exercise extreme caution, extreme patience also, and we try to understand. Some of them cannot go online, and some of them will took the examinations online, but then they cannot send the the answers. And then some of them are sending the answers already, but then suddenly internet is cut off, or some of them are using a prepaid data service, and then their data is already done. So then they cannot do it. So these are actually one big challenge. But these are things that we wanted to understand also. That's why in the university, we always involve the principle of asynchronicity. So the students are given more time to answer examinations, and we bar the students, or we barred our professors from giving online assessments that are done on the spot, like an on the spot quiz, a homework which is due tonight if it's given today. So it's just like basically the pattern that we are using, or that we are advocating right now, and we're turning our faculty also, is that they have to design an entire program where the students who are actually, because there are some students who are very, very good and they can finish the task in one setting. So we discovered that if you give the students a task like from chapters 1 to 6 at one setting at the same time, they can finish it fast. But if you give them like 1 day chapter 1, second day chapter 2, third day chapter 3, the more that they are going to take things slow. So therefore, they will be beating the deadlines, but they don't really answer it right away. And so that's one thing that we have discovered so far. And yeah, that's basically it. It's the participation. The biggest thing is the participation of the students right now. That's for the college students, or even for graduate school. Some of them are still not that adjusted. Although it's been a year since we're doing online, fully online courses.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for saying, Gilbert. Maybe I'll come to Professor Lema. One question, and this I can see Professor Tilakaratne raising his hand, so maybe I'll just invite him for a minute.
So Aditya wants me to join with another session, and Dallas, thank you very much. But I have three things to mention. I agree with the previous speaker, where that challenges online. I have three perspectives. One is student, and second academic in our country. Third is infrastructure. In case of students, that is the attitude change from physical delivery to the online, where it's a big let's say a challenge winning the hearts of the students to go online. And the second is academic again. So how that academics are transforming into the that online delivery. So let's say, for example, so more or less the academics are thinking that, so I mean based on the credit value, the 3-hour online session, 2-hour at a stretch online session, we know that it's very boring online to listen that too long. So therefore what that my the approach is that to use some that free resources like Mentimeter, Kahoot, and GoSo Box and Padlet, so to get the maximum student participation, and then so making that teaching and learning process is a fun. And the third perspective is that infrastructure, of course, that there are, that is with the, internet connectivity in our country, of course, very strong, but there are remote areas where that the remote areas from Colombo and the major cities, and it's that connectivity problems are there, and the signals are not flowing out. Then therefore that access problems are there. So those are the things that we need to find that the very quick answers. So that's why I raise my hand. And one more request, that if you could share your very good insight that you have given. I read that whole World Economic Forum report, but the way that you put it, it's very important for us to propagate the concept of that Coursera, and that again at the same time, what are the by 2025 the category wise that employment opportunities. So if you could share it later on, and it is not for plagiarism, it is for use of, I mean, encouraging our, because this message should go to the the different the tiers levels, academics, students. Otherwise this message is if I'm keeping with me only, that won't work, that your objective will not be achieved.
I agree. No, I think we will share, and there is no plagiarism here, because this is information for everyone to share and learn from. Maybe I just want to ask before you go one question, and I'll come to Professor Lema as well on this one, given both of you spoke about the industry piece. One of the things that we noticed in speaking to our various collaborative universities is that they found a challenge where when we give them the insights into the skills areas, obviously they always found the next challenge of finding who could teach that level of skill, right? So there was this gap between what the industry was demanding versus the faculty's readiness to teach some of that new age concepts and newer technologies, right? So that was another area that we found as one of the challenges that some of the universities that we spoke to. I just wanted to see if you faced the same challenges in your respective countries as well.
Yeah, of course, yes. And so a lot of challenges in case of now when we go online, let's say virtual, now it is ODFL, open distance flexible learning. So how do we embed sets of skills, of course, required by the industry partners? So that the first question comes to us. Say in the physical teaching and learning, so we could form groups, and then let's say we can have live presentation. So on site we can give the feedback. But here, the remote learning, and again, it's a, that what the digital division is there. So therefore, that we have to have, there are methods, but that we need to have a concrete method that how to, let's say, so leadership skills, negotiation, communication, resilience, empathy. So a lot of, skill sets are there, working with others, group work, decision making, emotional intelligence. Those are the skills, needed by the industry. So how do we embed in those skills while that we transform our, the physical delivery into the online teaching and learning? It's a challenge.
No, absolutely. And I'll just show you, this just one aspect. Let me see if this makes sense to each one of you. This is a master's in business kind of a program where we spoke up, and here we looked at the curriculum of that university, and then we embedded that university's standard curriculum. Typically, if you see, for example, you have semester 1 with marketing foundation, business statistics, etc. So this is what the traditional curriculum that exists. But what this university was offered was, what they did was that they picked a few courses from Coursera and embedded those courses in the curriculum, saying that this is online credit that you would get through, a business statistics and analysis from Rice University is what you will do, instead of doing a teacher teaching it, right? And then as they move forward, they mix that with, they mix that with, let's say, a social media marketing skill certification from Facebook, which was then ready for the industry to absorb, right? Similarly, a marketing analytics program which came from Emory University, that was embedded as a new area of skill, right? So this is one that they did in the context of blending the curriculum, in the context of how they took Coursera content and blended that into your existing curriculum. The second was, of course, as you spoke about, the second part is around skilling for the future jobs, right? In engineering, they started looking at newer technologies. Let's, for example, EV is a big area, right? So in the mechanical engineering courses, how do we bring in courses that were available on EV, or on the chemical engineering side, how do we embed something like a battery technology? So these were newer age skills for which they did have skills within the universities, but these were pulled from Coursera and they were then integrated into the curriculum, right? So same way in a liberal arts program, you could bring in design, you could bring in decision sciences, you could bring in social media marketing. That enabled a liberal arts student to become ready for employability as he moved forward. So these were some contexts of blending that we noticed, and I thought this was something that would be of interest to you. I know Professor Tilakaratne, you need to move. If you need to go, I'll let you go. And Professor Lema, I'll just pick on your thoughts around these aspects.
Look forward to work with you. Thank you very much for your cooperation. So, okay,
Thank
bye.
you. So Professor Lema, just a few, as I said, some more perspectives that I shared. I just wanted to hear, and in this context of finding challenges in instructors being available on new age skills, and then second, of course, in the context of blending the courses into your existing curriculum.
What you have just shown is a combination of practically replacing a course with a Coursera course. So the student would enroll in Coursera, and Coursera takes care of everything.
Yes.
And as far as I understand, you curate the subject so that it would fit the way we would want it done if it's a regular course that we offer, right?
Yes.
So that literally replaces the teacher.
Correct. So, in some cases replaces the teacher. In some places, what we have seen is teachers say, okay, you do this course. They do it in async mode. Saying async, you tell the students you study this and come, and then the teacher comes in, they flip the classroom, and then they engage the students in their live session more around Q&A or a case discussion, right? So they're not spending time in building the fundamentals. The fundamentals is certified. They know the class has completed the fundamentals, and then they go into more practical aspect. They pick if there is a technology course, they could take a guided project and leverage the guided project into a live learning environment, and then make the student go through a live learning environment in a blended form, right? So you blend it. So in some cases, in some universities, we have seen about 20% of these credits completely on Coursera, no professor engagement. In another set, they've said it is a mix, right? There is an existing professor cohort who is overseeing that course. The teaching is not done here. The teaching is self-learning, and the teacher focuses on the blended part of the applied learning. So they bring in specific guided projects, so that whatever the student has learned, they then check on the student as to how they apply them in either a case environment or in a project environment.
Right.
Okay.
Dallas, if I can just add on to what you're saying, if you look at the approaches that various universities have taken, across Asia Pacific, Professor Lema, is that if you want to add a new specialization, so whether it's AI, whether it's machine learning, that is where a full course from Coursera is taken in as the fundamental teaching tool. Whereas if you're teaching something already, there the Coursera course is used in a blended format, where possibly, like Dallas said, the fundamentals are taught through Coursera, where Coursera course actually becomes like a textbook where they go back and learn it online, and the teacher talks about application of those concepts. So there are various approaches that have been taken, but one that our team will actually work with you to kind of customize it to your needs and your goals as a university. That's also completely possible. So there are no standard hard-coded formats. We work with the institution and align to your priorities and the goals that you have.
Mhm. Okay. I'll be very honest. That part on Coursera taking over a course may not be something welcome to our teachers, because that means you put them out of job.
Yes, I've heard
One.
that. Yes, Professor Lehman, I've heard that, and we see. So our skills transformation experts who work with you during when you sign up, we are very careful on that aspect, that we don't want faculty to ever feel that way, because without faculty, there's no university, right? So the focus is that how do we build on the faculty's development? How do you get them to be ready to start leveraging these new tools so that the learner impact is high? And then at the same time, you are building a university where the university student satisfaction rates are higher, the employability rates are higher, and the acceptance of the courses are much higher. So we work on those objectives without having to work with, saying replace this. It's you evolve. The way we have seen is that most places people start with an approach where we are blended into the curriculum with a professor cohort. Later on, as teachers realize that it gives when they have let some teaching to be done through Coursera, it gives them more time for research. It gives them more time for self-development in new areas of skills, because they get Coursera access as well. So it improves their own development and makes them better. So that when you go through that journey, you see the adoption of Coursera in a blended format really, really well.
Mhm. That's exactly what I'm thinking in as far as putting and somehow blending Coursera into our curriculum. Not that Coursera will take over, but that the teachers will be making use of Coursera as another source of the content
Correct.
to somehow internationalize our curriculum.
I
On
agree.
how that could be done is something that is not very clear in our minds as of now, because what we saw in the first slide that you showed, that courses were replaced by Coursera, that instead of taking it with us, it's Coursera that takes over. That's something maybe that would come in the future, but not now. We wanted to start small and pilot it with a few courses and the challenge of training our teachers in making sure that the blending is as flawless and seamless as possible.
Yes, absolutely. So you see, this is the overall framework of how we look at things, right? There is a part of the faculty upskilling. There is part of blending your current curriculum, core curriculum into with the content, and then of course giving the emerging skills access for which you don't have skills in your university to the students, right? So, and then finally, of course, you spoke about soft skills and other areas which allows for students to pick multidisciplinary learning across subjects, right? To somebody one is in the context of an engineering student wanting to learn design, right? So he gets that access, and similarly, a liberal arts student wanting to learn data sciences or data analysis, because that's an area of interest for them. So that's one thing that you could always do. The other aspect which we also encourage heavily is this context of building your own, right? So we talk about building your own credit eligible courses. The platform allows you to create your own. So you tell your professors to create their content and then bring that content into the platform that is available to your students. It's just for your students. It's in your private author. It's called a private authoring capability, where your teachers could then pick the capability of the platform, build their courses, build their lectures, and then put that in the platform. And that becomes the teaching, the blended teaching format for the student, where they have a live teacher and that same teacher's content available in the repository for them to constantly refer to, right? So that becomes credit eligible as well. So we encourage
Can
people
Can I add something else?
Sure, please.
We have a challenge of cost
Okay.
as well, because in the situation of this pandemic, our hands are tied as to fees. We cannot increase. In fact, we had to do some rebates of fees last year, and our students are expecting more rebates this year. And
Yeah.
and with that, we are limited with trying to reconfigure our fees so that we can accommodate the Coursera fees. But what we're seeing now is this might be a major challenge, because we seem to be, we cannot be miracle workers. We will have to live within what was approved in the previous years, and our students are expecting refunds and rebates and refunds and rebates, because they're not coming to school, they're not using this and that, with all those excuses. This is the scenario where many of the universities are in the Philippines, and that's the challenge, to be more honest and upfront with all of you here.
So, Professor Lemma, you would be surprised how common it is across Asia Pac. I think the sentiment around not increasing fees is very common in many universities. And I've seen that here in India. I've seen that in other parts of the world when I speak to my colleagues in Europe or in the US. So there is absolutely the same sentiment, right? So we do find that as a common theme. And I'm sure we can ask my colleague Aditya to get in touch, or Tarun to speak to you around. We have some programs that allows universities to embed this in a way without, starting with any cost to start with. We have a program called C4CB, which is Coursera for Campus Basic, which allows you to start off with no cost, with at least one course, so that you build with something which is where you start building that initial culture of blending online, offline, and then you grow into a fully, more blended learning. So you have those approaches. There are other mechanisms available with the teams that we have on the field, who can come with you to shrink that cost, at least in the first year, in a way that, at least in this 1 year, because of COVID, how do we get access to the tools to your teams, at the same time make the cost as minimal as possible, at least in the first year? So those are some tools that are available with our teams.
Wow. We will be excited to get to know that program, because what was introduced to us is a 3-year contract at a certain fee every year for 3 years. And we're just trying to figure out how we can afford. That's why I brought up the issue, because much as we wanted to give it a try and do a pilot test, it's quite an expensive pilot test for us. And I'm glad to hear that there's a possibility of
Yes.
maybe a 1-year trial, so we can see how it's done and we get the feel of the culture of that blended learning with Coursera. That would be something we're interested in.
Sure.
Thank
I
you.
think, me and Pushkar, we will communicate this back to the teams that are talking to you. If that's the big challenge or a roadblock, I'm sure we will find an answer for that as well. All right. I think this is what all that I had. Maybe if I have to just summarize, in terms of the 3 things that we spoke about. One is, of course, we will share our insights that we have in terms of what we see vis-a-vis what is the industry asking, where is the future of skills, how that's going to impact education, and how can we blend and shrink that gap between future demand of skills versus the time universities get ready to impart those skills, right? So the fundamental idea is to shrink that timeline, and how do we make the institutions and the educating educationers to come together so that the learner is more ready, right, faster. The second part, of course, was around the challenges of online learning, various approaches in the context of, be it in terms of new skills, instructors being available, or in the context of blended learning, online learning. Pure online learning having its own issues around, be it in the student part, something as simple in our part of Asia around infrastructure availability, to more softer aspects like student engagement, right? So these are the 2 big areas that we always see. The third one, of course, in a pure online environment, which we also hear from professors, is about academic integrity, right? In moment you bring digital, so how do you bring academic integrity into that, in the context that your credit courses are delivering the outcome that it is supposed to do, right? So these are the 3 aspects that we have found in the blended learning. The last one, of course, is various approaches to blended learning, right? So we have seen universities being set up with completely Coursera driven content, driving online degrees. We have seen campuses blending courses in a multidisciplinary scenario, where they have not changed their curriculum, but they have given access to a set of new courses for students to pick as electives and build new skills on. Or we have seen the third category, where some existing courses are replaced with Coursera courses, and thereby giving more time to the faculty to focus on research and student outcomes, right? So that the impact is more. So we have seen 3 different types of learning approaches. I'm sure there will be more that will emerge. And as we see that happening, we'll be happy to share with each one of you. So in the meanwhile, I thank each one of you for joining us, and appreciate the time you spent with us in this discussion. Thank you so much.